So in the last sessions, so many days before, please remember that this is combined lectures and this is for all the divisions, right? So still, the number of students who are attending in the college are quite in large number, whereas the students who have joined over here are on I don't know, because maybe so many issues are there. And again, I am doing a recording, so maybe the students are familiar that we will go through the recordings. Anyway, whatever it would be, but kindly ensure that it should be adequately communicated to the all the students, right? We are literally running out of time, and we need to complete the syllabus on a timely basis with appropriate coverage of the syllabus, right? So in the last sessions, we were discussing about the due diligence. So we understand what do you mean by due diligence, the meaning and nature of due diligence, difference between the due diligence and audit, importance of due diligence, areas in which the due diligence can take place, right? That what we have discussed, and the aspect to be covered in financial due diligence. So that's what we have discussed all this. Then we stopped over the statutory compliances and then the works approach to due diligence. So due diligence is to ensure that whether a particular activity it is worthwhile to carry out or not, depending upon the particular situations and circumstances. So obviously here it is about the finance. So the process of due diligence is exercised so as to analyze a numerous variable like the age of the company, market geography, price level, etc., etc. Essential requirements of due diligence process is to assess the fair value of the business under considerations. Means if I am going to acquire a particular enterprise, whether the price which I am paying, whether it is appropriate or not, that is checking of that is known as a due diligence. So the fair value of business is ascertained in an appropriate manner. The following steps mentioned below. So that is step number 1, 2, 3, and 4. It is just a list. There are there are so many other steps are there. So reviewing and reporting on the financials submitted by the target company. So the target company है जिसने जो अपने बिजनेस को बेचना चाहती है, उसने जो आपको फिनेंशियल रिपोर्ट सबमिट किए हैं उसको रिव्यू करने का और उसकी आई थिंक समवन हैज अनम्यूट द माइक, इज इट सो? No. Anyway, so understand that you need to understand due diligence. If I want to give you an example where you do a due diligence, suppose if you want to uh, buy a particular car or a two wheelers, right? And if you choose from where you want to buy, so obviously you are taking feedback from your relatives who recently bought a particular two wheelers, and you take the information from them and you try to understand if there are two or three showrooms of the same company is available on which you are interested to buy a two wheeler, then obviously we will ask to the people who have visited. So based on their experience which they are sharing with you, that this particular showrooms people are very more cooperative, they are providing sufficient informations, they are very cooperative, and the price which is charged by them is absolutely reasonable. And if they have a bad experience with some of the showrooms, they will share with you that bad experience. So that process which you are adopting, it is nothing but a due diligence, that whether it is worthwhile to buy a particular two wheeler from a particular showroom or not, right? So here that is same way in finance when the one company is to be taken over by the another company. So the company who is going to take over the another company, before investing or before buying a particular company, he will make a due diligence, right? So that information is coming from the review or reporting of the financials submitted by the target company, assessing the business by the site visits, if applicable. If it is possible, you can physically verify over there, go over there and observe and identify whether it is worthwhile or not. And whatever the information which is mentioned under the documentary evidence is actually true. Working through the due diligence process with the acquisitioning the company or investor by defining the key areas, right? So आप उसके साथ बैठ के, if you are doing a due diligence, you may sit with the investor or the persons who wants to carry out in what in particular area they are more interested for them and for which purpose they want to acquire. Prepare an offer based on the completions of the due diligence and whatever the information you have gathered, whatever the knowledge you have gathered. Based on that, you inform to the buyer that how much price is required to be paid. So prepare an offer. Conducting a due diligence to be started with an open mind. So you should not be influenced by anyone, and you do not have any perceptions in your mind before you start the due diligence, because you should be independent and unbiased. Do not assume that anything wrong will found and look for it. What needs to be done is identify the trouble spot and ask for the explanations. So you are not going over there to identify the discrepancies or the problems, uh, right? But you are there whether a particular entity is uh, going to be acquired is appropriate or not, right? So that's what you have to see. And if there are any problems or there are some discrepancies is there, whether after taking over that particular entity it is handleable, right? The acquire or the buyer or the investor would be in a position to tackle it, or you can say the handle it, and it is worthwhile. So that's what is required to be done in the due diligence. You make an estimates. It's purely based on estimates whether it is manageable or not. Get the best team of the people. Best team of the people means the people who are actually doing the due diligence should be of the knowledgeable persons. They have the requisite knowledge of which they are doing a due diligence. If required, the due diligence experts may be hired from outside the firm. While hiring such professionals, their experience records needs to be taken care of. Get help in all areas like finance, tax accounting, legal, marketing, technology, and any other relevant to the assignment, so that you get 360-degree view of the acquisition candidate. So it's very important that in due diligence you take care of finance, which is obviously a very very important area. Tax complications, tax accounting means direct and indirect taxes, whether the entity is adequately complying with, and in near future there would not be any conflict with the income tax department, or whether the indirect income tax department, indirect tax department. So there should not be any conflict or there should not be any confusions. So that's what you need to take care of it. And you have to have a legal view whether there is any it's legally to acquire, and it comply with the all acquisition rules and regulations set by the regulatory authorities. Marketing and technology, nowadays technology is very very important, because the way the business entity are functioning is highly dependent on the technology they adopt. And if your competitor will come with the better technology, then it would be very difficult for you to acquire a particular entity, and you may fail to have an adequate due diligence process if you missed out that. So these all areas should be taken care of so that it gives you the 360-degree, means from all the angle you have evaluate the particular proposals of takeover. Talk to the customer, supplier, business partners, and employee are the great resources. So you need to talk whether the customers are satisfied or not, suppliers are happy with you, right? The business partners are comfortable, employees, are very, very, loyal to the entity, and so or not. Take a risk management approach. So while you want to do your research, you also want to make sure that you do not antagonize the team of people of a target company by bludgeoning them down with the lots of questions. It's very essential that when you go over there, you have a team which is sensible, responsible, and they raise the questions, you know, which can be answered uh, by the entity, and you cannot bombing, you can say bodging them down with the lots of questions. So you are asking so many questions that they get disturbed, and again the questions are have a same answers. You have a two or three questions, but all the questions have a same answers. So they may get confused, or they are not, they don't provide it. You may spend a lot of amount of time on it, and ultimately you will not get out of it which is required to be obtained. So you should be very sensible. Prepare a comprehensive report detailing the compliances and the substantive risk oblique issues. So you need to understand, you have to prepare a comprehensive report which gives you whether you have compliances with the risk or issues which is aroused during the due diligence process. That's what you have to see. The content of the due diligence report are very big content, right? ये सारी चीजें उसके अंदर होनी चाहिए. The executive summary, introductions, objective of due diligence, terms of reference and scope of uh, verifications, right? So आपने क्या क्या verification किया है, uh, brief history of the company, or you can say the entity who is carrying out the uh, due diligence, or of the company of which the due diligence is carried out. Summary on capital structure and group structure of the company, shareholding pattern, observation on the review, assessment of management structure, then financial liabilities, valuation of assets, operating results, taxation and statutory liabilities, possible liabilities on account of litigations, means contingent liability, you can say, uh, assessment of net worth, any liability not provided in the books of accounts, particularly the contingent liability for which you have to make a disclosures. Any liability not provided in the books, and then short analysis means strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. Generally, the SWOT analysis is useful everywhere. It is also useful in our life, and as well, it is also useful to the auditors as well, or to the management. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What is the opportunities available for the growth? And what are the threats which exist? So that's what you have to see. That SWOT analysis is very, very important in the due diligence. Uh, Status on charges, lien, mortgage of an assets of the company. If any charge or lien or mortgage of the asset has been created, or if it is given as a security to the lenders, or as a security of as a guarantor to the third person, then it should be adequately uh, reflected into the books of accounts, and it is reasonable, and the terms and conditions are reasonable. The ways and means to cover the unforeseen contingent liabilities, aspect to be taken care before or after the merger, interlocking the investment or financial obligations with group or associate companies, amount available subject to litigation. So yes, this is again a list. It depends upon what the other kinds of content should be included in the due diligence report. It depends upon the scope which is determined between the person who is carrying out the due diligence and the officials of the entity. Is it clear? This is all about the due diligence,
Yes, sir.
right? अभी भी है, लेकिन
Yes, sir.
fine, fair enough. The next topic is very, very important is investigation. So all of you learn the investigations. So a very simple question, audit versus investigations. So let's start with the new topic of investigations. Investigation is completely different uh, than the the audit. Uh, Audit is always start with a positive intent, whereas the investigation is always start means someone wants to do an investigation means that there is doubt and doubt that there is something wrong. So if any perceptions of in the minds of the people that there is something wrong and to identify what is wrong, or they are not sure about whether there is a wrong or not, but there is a high possibility is that there is something wrong. So for that purpose the investigation is carried out, whereas in case of audit there is no questions at all about anything wrong, right? So investigation starts with some amount of negativity into mind, whereas audit there is no negativity in mind. So that is what is the basic difference between the audit and investigations. So audit, it involves the independent examination of the financial information contained in the financial statement to express an opinion whether or not the same have been prepared properly. In essence, the audit involves independent examination of the financial information prepared by the management of an entity. So that is typically the auditing, whereas investigations. So the main objectives under the audit is actually the expression of opinion that whether the books of account reflects the true and fair view or not. That is what is the exclusive objectives of the auditor. However, investigator his primary object to identify what is wrong and why it is so. So that is what is the primary object. So investigation implies systematic, critical, and partial examination of the records of the business for a specific purpose. Specific purpose के लिए है ना होता है. The examination conducted under the investigation is intensive as well as exhaustive so far as the activities or the area of accounting is concerned. So अगर आप देखोगे first line it is ना investigation implies a systematic, critical and partial examination. It is not independent examinations of the records of the business so far as a specific purpose for which the investigation is carried out. So that is what is the specific purpose. So वो अपने specific objective की critical examination होती है, partial examination होती है. The examination conducted under the investigation is intense, बहुत ही डिटेल होती है और एक्सट्रीम लेवल पे होती है, एज वेल एज एग्जॉस्टिव, बहुत ही बड़ी होती है, कुछ भी उसके अंदर छोड़ा जाएगा नहीं. एंड देन ओनली यू वुड बी एबल टू रीच अ पर्टिकुलर decisions, conclusions. So far as the activities or areas of accounting is concerned, investigation requires a concentrated focus on the subject matter of inquiry and the related matters. So that is the investigation. Now let's understand what is the difference between the audit and investigations. So this talks about the differences. See the objective. So it is different through the objective. The basis is the difference of between the audit and investigation. There are bases. So one of the bases objective. The objective of audit is to ensure that the financial statement reflects the true and fair view or not. That is what is the objective. So to verify whether the financial statement display a true and fair view of the state of affairs and the working results of the entity. Whereas investigation aims at establishing a fact or helping or at assessing the particular situation. So जिस पर्पस के लिए इन्वेस्टिगेशन किया जाता है उस पर्पस के हिसाब से, है ना, the investigations will be decided and that what will be the arts objective. So investigation, suppose अगर मुझे किसी entity को acquire करना है और उसको एक्वायर करते समय मेरे को पता ऐसा चलता है कि इस कंपनी, मेरे पास ऐसी इंफॉर्मेशन आई जिससे मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि ये कंपनी अच्छा परफॉर्म नहीं कर रही। नाउ आई वुड लाइक टू नो कि वो किन एरिया में नहीं कर रही है, राइट? और आइदर द एंटिटी टू whom I want to acquire there is a huge theft of cash, वहाँ पे केस की चोरी हो चुकी है, अब उनके पास पैसे नहीं है इसीलिए वो अपना बिजनेस बेचना चाहते हैं। सपोज द मैनेजमेंट ऑफ द company or the entity, the governing persons of an entity, identifies that there are some people who are involved in fraud in the books of accounts, and they are very, very, very sincere and intelligent to manipulate the books of accounts, right? So, investigation with regard to fraud by employee. So, number of ways the investigation has carried out. So, based on its aim, right, establishing the facts or the happening or at the assessing the particular situation. Scope. The scope of audit is wide and is determined by the provisions of the relevant law in case of statutory audit. So if it is a statutory audit, generally there is a law which define the scope of audit. So there is no options to the company or the others that they can decide the scope. So it cannot be curtailed as well as it cannot be enhanced beyond a particular level. The scope of investigations may govern by the statute or it may be non-statutory. So generally the investigation, the person who is carrying out the investigation will have an engagement with the auditor or the person who is carrying out the investigation. तो वो कौन इन्वेस्टिगेशन कर रहा है, कौन करवा रहा है, एक्चुअली इन्वेस्टिगेशन कौन करवा रहा है वो जनरली, और जिसके पास करवा रहा है वो दोनों बैठ के पहले अच्छी तरीके से ऑब्जेक्टिव को समझेंगे कि व्हाट आर द पर्पस ऑफ कैरिंग आउट द इन्वेस्टिगेशन एंड देन व्हाट शुड बी इंक्लूडेड इन द स्कोप अकॉर्डिंगली टू अचीव दैट ऑब्जेक्टिव, that should be mutually decided. Periodicity audit is carried out on either quarterly, half yearly or yearly, right? The work is not limited by a rigid time framework, right? So investigation is carried out as and when it is required. But audit is a regular exercise. So either the quarterly, half yearly or on a quarterly, half yearly or yearly. तो वो उस हिसाब से आप ऑडिट करवाओगे and it should be regular. Whereas investigation will be carried out only and only when there is something wrong, and to identify that wrong, the investigation can be carried out. Nature uh, involves test checking. The audit involves test checking to collect the evidence for forming a judgment. Requires a detailed study and examination of the facts and figures. So investigations में है ना फैक्ट्स के बारे में ज्यादा होता है, राइट, और फिगर के बारे में ज्यादा होता है व्हेन इट इज रिक्वायर्ड टू कैरी आउट द इन्वेस्टिगेशंस। जबकि ऑडिट के अंदर रूटीन ट्रांजैक्शन और रूटीन जो ट्रांजैक्शन होते हैं उसको रूटीन के हिसाब से एग्जामिन किया जाता है। एंड जनरली टू डू सो द टेस्ट चेकिंग कैन बी यूज्ड, sometimes sampling can also be used. So 100% examination cannot be there, but however in case of investigations 99% it is 100% checking. right? So inherent limitation, audit suffers from the inherent limitation. There is no inherent limitation owing to its nature of engagement. So investigation, there is no limitation because the person who is carrying out the investigations will decide the scope to achieve the objectives. Evidence. Audit is mainly concerned with prima facie evidence, means which is directly available. Whereas investigation seeks conclusive evidence. So under the audit, it is the evidence are prima facie evidence. तो वो नॉर्मल एविडेंस होंगे क्योंकि उसको ही आप एग्जामिन करोगे, उसके ऊपर से ही आप पहुंचोगे कि देयर इज अ ट्रू एंड फेयर व्यू एंड देयर इज नो मिसअप्रोप्रिएशन ऑफ केस और देयर इज no errors or frauds. However, as far as investigation is concerned, whatever the documentary evidence which is subject to investigation, either it provides the thorough information, means it is helpful for the investigations, or it should not be. So it should be conclusive evidence. Observations of accounting principles. Uh, it, i- the audit is governed by a compliance with generally accepted accounting principles, auditing procedures, and disclosure requirements. Whereas the investigation is critical examinations and requires the thorough mind capable of observing, collecting, and evaluating the facts. Reporting. Generally, the outcome is reported to the owners of the entity. So generally the owner होते हैं उसको ही audit report जाता है. Whereas the investigation outcome is reported to the persons on whose behalf the investigation is carried out. So जिसके behalf पे investigation carried out की गई उसी हिसाब से आपको right investigation करना है. Steps in investigation. What are the steps in investigation? I am reading the one by one all the steps. The details which is given under the material you can read by yourself. So if you look at the step one is determination of the objective and the establishment of scope. So whenever the investigation is carried out, the person who is carrying out the investigation has to clearly determine what is the objective. So there should be an absolute consultation between the person who is carrying out the investigation and the person who actually going to do the task of investigation. So the objective should be very clear and there should not be any confusions and there should be an adequate understanding in the same spirit between the person who is carried out the investigation and the person who is carrying out the investigations. Investigation program. It is important that the persons who is, wants to provide a better services of investigations, he should provide an investigation program should provide the program. Program means it is one kind of an audit program which provides the detailed instruction and guidelines that how the investigations can be carried out. So obviously it is always based on the objectives and establishment of scope. So objective or scope के हिसाब से there should be an investigation program and which should cover each and area of investigations thoroughly, right? And 100% checking. Collection of evidence, right? So the person who is carrying out the investigation has to do an investigation in such a way that he or she as an investigator obtain the sufficient and appropriate evidence based on which they can reach to a particular conclusions. So the collection of evidence. Step 4, analysis and interpretations of findings. So whatever the evidence you have collected, right? Based on that collected evidence, you can do an analysis and reach to a particular conclusions and interpret the findings. So whatever is available, interpret it. What could be, whether it is useful for the person who is carrying out the investigations. So that's what you have to do, the analysis and interpretation of finding. Reporting of findings. The nature of report to be submitted by the investigator is governed mainly by the two factors: the instruction given by the client and B, findings of the investigation. So that's what reporting: the instruction given to the client and the findings. What is the findings of investigation? The steps to be kept in mind while preparing the report: the report should not contain anything which is not relevant. रिलेवेंट ना हो उसके बारे में वो कुछ भी बात नहीं करनी चाहिए. Then expression used, and the report should not contain anything which is not relevant. Expression used should be properly considered so that the responsibility of arriving at a difficult meaning or interpretations other than the one enacted by the investigator can be minimized. Then relevant facts and conclusions should be properly linked. Fourth, bases and the assumptions made should be explicitly stated. The report should clearly spell out the nature and objective of the assignment, its scopes and limitations. Report should be made in paragraph form with heading for the following. So whatever you are maintaining in the audit report, it is very, very important. So report should also state the restrictions or limitations, if any, imposed on the instructions given by the client. So if there is any kind of hurdles or there is a disturbance because of the genuine reasons, you need to inform to the concerned branch, or means branch means the persons who is with the meaning of branch which I recently talked is the person who is carrying out the investigations, right? So you communicate adequately with them. Opinion of the investigator should appear in the final paragraph of the report, right? So opinion means the conclusion, whatever the conclusion the investigator reach, whether it is worthwhile to do or not, that should be clearly mentioned in the paragraph. Are you able to understand, dear students, the investigations?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Partial issues in investigations: whether an investigator is required to undertake 100% verification or selective verification. Generally, the investigator has to do the 100% examinations and verifications, right? So, यहाँ पे लिखा ही होगा, and it depends on the circumstances of the case under investigation. For example, if the investigator has to establish the amount of cash defalcated by the cashier, he needs to examine all the cash vouchers and related transactions. So in that you cannot do, you know, but if he is to arrive at a profitability of the concerns, he may verify the transactions on a selective basis, taking care of the materiality aspects. So something like that. Whether the investigator can put reliance on the already audited statement of accounts. Generally, no. Right. So audit is carried out without any doubts, whereas the investigation is carried out where there is something is doubtful and it is not acceptable. Then only the investigation is carried out. So generally, uh, the the investigator will not put 100% reliance on the uh, audited statement of accounts. So it depends upon the circumstances of the case under the audit. If the investigation be carried out because of some doubt in the audited accounts, no question of reliance on the audited statement of accounts arises. However, if the investigation has been carried out for the purposes like established value of a business or share, or the amount of goodwill payable by the incoming partners, the investigator would be entitled to put the reliance on the audited accounts. So you have to, accept whatever uh, the sorry, there is something, but so it would be very difficult, है ना? So incoming partner है उनके लिए, तो it would be very difficult to put any reliance on it. Short and prompt versus bureaucrats. An accountant, when making an investigation for the incoming partner, was entitled to assume that the figures appearing in the books of accounts were correct. It is advisable for the investigator to ascertain from the client in advance, in writing, whether the audited statement of account produced to produced to him should be taken as correct. Assistance of experts. If and at any moment of time during the performance of an investigations, if the investigator is of the opinion that there is a particular area where he is not an expert, and to achieve the objectives of the investigation, it is necessary to take the help of the expert. He should take without any hesitation. Investigation and investigation out of the dispute and conflicting claims. Uh, Sometimes the cases for investigation arises out of the dispute or conflicting claims. So if there is a partnership firm, the partners are not relying on each other and they are making allegations against each other, and it would be very difficult for them to come out from it. So investigation comes out to something of disputes. Investigator is required to be alert to the possibility of the information or document made available to him to be prejudiced. So, basis of on a basis of opinion of an investor. Investigator should confine his opinion to the established fact and nothing more. इन्वेस्टिगेशन के दरमियान उसके पास जो डॉक्यूमेंट्री एविडेंस आए हैं उसके बेस के ऊपर ही, उसके अंदर जो फैक्ट्स है उसके ऊपर ही उसको अपना रिपोर्ट देना है, और किसी भी चीज के ऊपर उसको ध्यान देने की जरूरत नहीं है और नहीं देनी चाहिए एक्चुअली. If the facts as conveyed through the books, records or paper and other evidence are not capable of being properly established, he should qualify the opinion or issue the disclaimer. तो फिर उसको disclaimer issue करना चाहिए. Whether an investigator can make a futuristic statements, right? If it is generally, he never do any and futuristic statements, and the investigator should refuse to be futuristic. तो उसको futuristic रहना चाहिए नहीं, because future is not certain and there is no sufficient basis available on which he can conclude. He may assume that the established trend in the business will continue in the near future in absence of any contrary evidence in arriving at the present value of the business. He, however, should not project the trend into any future years to establish a value, right? So वो भी होना चाहिए नहीं. Retention of working paper, obviously same, it is something like a audit working paper. As the audit working papers are the properties of auditor, here the investigator, whatever he has collected, the responsibility is of them or उसकी ही हो रहेगी. Investigating accountant should retain all the working papers. Such papers help him to give evidence in the court of law to support his figure if someone has challenged the figure which is notified by the investigator. Working paper will also be of immense help in correlating the facts and events and draft report. Am I clear बच्चों, समझ में आ रहा है?
Sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
यस. ये कैसा कैसा ऐसी आवाज आ रही है कि ऐसी आवाज निकल रही है?
Yeah, sir.
ओके, चलो ये रिकॉर्ड हो रहा है लेक्चर. सो आपकी आवाज जो भी आ रही है वो रिकॉर्ड हो रही है, राइट? मेरी आवाज बैठ जाती है क्योंकि मैं सुबह 3 लेक्चर लेता हूँ और अभी ये 4th चल रहा है और फिर इसके बाद भी एक है. सो एवरी डे आई हैव 5 लेक्चर्स. सो कई बार मेरी आवाज भी बैठ जाती है बीच बीच में. Okay, so statutory, we are more concerned about the statutory, that is an inspector under the income and provisions of the Companies Act 2013. Investigation into the affairs of the company when it is doubtful that a particular company is carrying out something wrong or there is a fraud in the companies, then this provisions of Companies Act 2013 will be attracted. And investigations of ownership of the company, non-statutory, investigation on behalf of incoming partners, investigation for valuation of shares in private companies, investigation on behalf of banking proposing an advance. So, sorry, investigation on behalf of the bank proposing an advance or loan to a company. Investigation of fraud भी है, और investigation on behalf of person proposing to buy the business. As far as the non-statutory is concerned, more or less they are similar. Most of the information are similar, which is subject to investigation. Whereas in statutory, it is as per the Companies Act 2013 or as per the statute. So let's understand the first investigations into the affairs of the company, that is section 210, 212 and 213 of the Companies Act 2013. So investigation through an order of central government. So central government has an exclusive power under the Companies Act 2013 to initiate an inquiry or investigations into the affairs of the company. So if any particular moment of time, if the government becomes aware of that there is a particular company who is carrying out the fraud or maintaining a wrong books of accounts, they can use section 210, right? So who can order the investigation and appoint the inspector, that is the central government. Situation under which it can be ordered the investigation, कब investigation हो सकता है? So this is given A, B, C and D. On receipt of report of the registrar or inspector under section 208 of the Companies Act 2013, अगर कोई रिपोर्ट मिलता है रजिस्ट्रार को और इंस्पेक्टर को अंडर सेक्शन 208, और रिपोर्ट के बेस के ऊपर, है ना, द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट हैज पावर central government has power to carry out the investigations under into the affairs of the company. On intimation of the partial resolution passed by the company that the affairs of the company ought to be investigated. If there is an annual general meeting or extraordinary general meeting where the members have passed a partial resolution that there is something wrong, in that also the central government is entitled to appoint the investigator into the affairs of the company in public interest. बहुत ही बड़ा है. So अगर किसी भी मोमेंट के ऊपर सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट को ऐसा लग रहा है कि पर्टिकुलर कंपनी है, उसके अंदर माल प्रैक्टिसेस हो रही है और उसकी वजह से बहुत सारे लोग परेशान होने वाला है, so in public interest they can also, you know, carry out the investigations. Where an order is passed by the court or tribunal in any proceeding before it that the affairs of the company ought to be investigated. तो जहां पे कोर्ट, हाई कोर्ट, सेशन कोर्ट, है ना, क्रिमिनल कोर्ट, सुप्रीम कोर्ट, अगर कहीं पे भी कोई केस चल रहा है और वहां पे ऐसा एस्टेब्लिश हो जाता है कि कंपनी ने कुछ गड़बड़ है और जिसका इन्वेस्टिगेशन होना जरूरी है, तो भी सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट अंडर सेक्शन 210 can carry out the audit of the investigation, not audit, investigations of the affairs of the company. Then investigation by SFIO. SFIO means Serious Fraud Investigating Officer, right? So लिखा है central government may by order assign the investigation into the affairs of the company to a serious fraud investigation office in the following cases on receipt of report of the registrar or inspector अंडर सेक्शन 208 जो ऊपर हमने पढ़ा, और on intimation of the partial resolutions passed by the company, or in public interest on request of the department of central government or state government, where any case has been assigned to serious fraud investigation officer, no other investigation agency of central government or any state government shall proceed with the investigation in such case. तो अगर सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ने किसी को इन्वेस्टिगेट करने के लिए बोल दिया है तो फिर किसी और की बात नहीं चलेगी. Means ED, agencies of central government is ED, enforcement director or CBI, they cannot investigate. The serious fraud investigation officer shall follow the manner and procedure to provide and submit its reports to the central government. The central government may also direct to submit an interim report. तो interim report भी हो सकता है. इन्वेस्टिगेशन इन अदर केसेस, है ना. सो यहाँ पे ये 4 केस के अंदर इन्वेस्टिगेशन होता है, और इन्वेस्टिगेशन इन अदर केसेस दैट इज सेक्शन 213. द ट्रिब्यूनल में ऑन एप्लीकेशन मेड बाय not less than 100 member or members holding not less than 10% of the total voting power in case of company having a share capital, or not less than 1/5 of the persons of the company's registrar of member in case of the company having a no share capital, and supported by the necessary evidence. Yes, any questions? Someone has unmute the mic. Any questions?
No, sir.
No, sir.
So someone has unmute the mic, so that's the reason. Anyway, then it's fine. So please understand, कब investigation होता है other section 213 में. The tribunal may on application made, है ना. So if in a particular company, as the board of director are taking all the decisions, and at the annual general meeting, all the decisions are taken by majority, and in case the majority are not, you know, uh, transacting or making a resolution which is in the interest of the minority shareholders or minority members, shareholders means the member. So in that circumstances, a tribunal may, on an application made by not less than 100 members or members holding not less than 10% of the voting power in case of the company having a share capital, or not less than 1/5 of the persons of the company's registers of members in case the company having no share capital, and supported by the necessary evidence. So अगर वो लोग एप्लीकेशन करते हैं ट्रिब्यूनल को और उनको सपोज नेसेसरी एविडेंस देते हैं, तो उसके बेस के ऊपर ट्रिब्यूनल अदर इन्वेस्टिगेशन भी करवा सकती है. और on an application made to it by any other person, if it is satisfied that there are circumstances suggesting, so if these are the circumstances, means 1, 2 and 3 circumstances are there, right, then also the investigations can be carried out. The business of the company is being conducted with intent to defraud its customer, members, or any other person, or otherwise for a fraudulent or unlawful purpose, or that the company was formed for any fraudulent or unlawful purpose. अगर इसका है तो भी इन्वेस्टिगेशन हो सकता है. A person concerned in the formation of the company or the management of its affairs have been duly, have been guilty of fraud, misfeasance or other misconduct. तो जो people involved है, जिसने जिसने कंपनी फॉर्म की है, they are involved in fraud, already fraud में convict हो चुके हैं, and they are not reliable. The members of the company have not been given all the information with reference to the affairs which they might reasonably expected. So this could also be the situations. the order, after giving a reasonable opportunity of being heard to the party concerned, that the affairs of the company ought to be investigated by the investigator or inspector, the inspector appointed by the central government, and where such order is passed, the central government shall appoint one or more competent person as inspectors to investigate into the affairs of the company in respect of such matters and to report thereupon in such manner as the central government may direct. तो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ने जो डायरेक्ट दिया है उस हिसाब से इन्वेस्टिगेशंस होगा. इज इट क्लियर बच्चों, समझ में आ रहा है?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Now, investigations on ownership of the company, section 216 of the Companies Act, that we will discuss tomorrow. Is it clear?
Okay, sir.
Right.
Okay, sir.
Fine. So this is all
Yes.
about. Yes. So let me stop the session today here. Tomorrow, as per the regular timetable, I have a lecture in F8 that I am going to take it. Right. So that will continue. But the evening session is always and every day will be conducted, right? We are discussing further up to the completion of the syllabus, right? So thank you so much. See you tomorrow.